I am statements and look at who Jesus himself claimed to be. It's a little bit different. I'm sure I'm going to reference as we go through the series. I'm going to reference Jesus' birth, of course. But I think when we talk about it as well, or we talk about Amazing Grace, or we talk as a church about life, it is important for us to know who Jesus claimed to be, because these 7 I am statements are extremely powerful in who we get to worship. And so, yes, we are going to celebrate the virgin birth. We're going to do everything traditionally in that regard. But our actual sermon series is going to be out of John. So today we're going to introduce that. And so before we get into that, Advent will start on November 30th. That is something I know you guys have done in the past. It was going on when I came and visited last December. So if you want to be one of the families that reads one of those Sundays and you're trustworthy with a lighter, I know, I saw the look. It's okay. If you're trustworthy with the lighter, if one of you can read and the other person can light a candle, I would love to get those just marked out right away and say, okay, this family's going to do it this weekend, this family's going to do it. I believe as we continue to grow as a church, participation is absolutely number one. I think when people get participating in something, I think it grows the whole thing. It's just like I told our middle school Fellowship of Christian Athletes group that we're starting. I said, if I own this FCA group, it'll be as big as I can make it. If you guys take ownership of it, it'll be as big as you guys can make it, and you can grow it much bigger than I can. So we'll just do those Advents if you want one of them. If there's one that's near and dear to you, let me know. And so let's dive into this Christmas series, the I am statements. These I am statements are very powerful because in John 8:58, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, before Abraham was, I am." And this is an extremely powerful statement. It's really good when you can talk about one verse and then have a verse that supplements it to what it's talking about, and then you could actually preach for a whole hour, which I won't today because the YouTube side of things went a lot longer than I thought. We're working through some stuff, so this is going to be more of a short introduction. But the Pharisees who love to try to trap Jesus go to Jesus and they say, who are you? And Jesus starts saying, well, it's really hard to explain all that I am. Who am I? And he references Abraham, and the Pharisees ask him, so do you claim you've been alive for 30 years? Do you claim to be older than Abraham? And it seems like the ultimate trap question, correct? Because when they think of creation, they think, well, Jesus' life began when he was birthed, and that should be the age he started from. The only problem is Jesus has existed with God from the beginning of time. He was only conceived so that he could live and die for our sins. That's Jesus' only mission. That's the only reason he came to earth. He didn't come like so many of us who have been born here and we're struggling with, man, how do I get the most out of life? Like, is this all life is? Like, our goals, our ambitions, all of it. Jesus had none of his own goals. He had none of his own ambitions. He said, okay, Father, whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do it. Because I'm only here living to achieve your purpose. And I think our lives would all be a whole lot simpler if we could actually surrender to that fact. Okay, God, I'm just here to achieve your purposes. I can't wait to come home. Because I know just the struggle it is for my wife and I to know that home is just waiting, vacant, like desperately in need of beds and couches and TVs, all the important stuff, right? To get moved into that house. I know it's hard to be anxious about knowing you have such a blessing waiting for you, but it also shows my own frailty as your pastor, that it yet again shows why we need Jesus to be even above me in this church. Because I don't always think about that. I don't always think about that when I'm talking about my faith. I don't always say, hey, whatever is going on right now, it really isn't all that important, because someday my life's going to be over and I'm going to spend eternity in heaven. Francis Chan would always take this rope and he'd put a small little piece of tape on the end of one of the rope and he'd be like, this is my life. This rope represents eternity. How much of this rope is covered up? And so when Jesus comes to these people and they're like, so you're saying you're older than Moses or older than Abraham? And he's like, before Abraham was, I am. And it seems like, okay, that's a cool statement. But what Jesus is really doing is Jesus's declaration of being the I am pointed to the truth that he has authority, that the authority he has is not the same as any other. That he has a heavenly authority. That these Pharisees, they have the authority God's given them. They have an earthly authority. They have control of the church. And in church, I want you to hear that from my mouth, because I do everything I can not to be the typical pastor who is just, it's a job, I have authority here, I'm the CEO, I run this place. Because there's a lot of those pastors out here, if we're being honest. And the church lives and dies by what they do from the pulpit. I want you to know that the authority I have as your pastor is nowhere near the same authority that Jesus has. That he has a heavenly authority. These Pharisees have lost sight of the fact that the authority that they've been given is from God. They should be serving the people. They should be shepherding the people. They should be taking care of and loving the people. And instead, Jesus has gotten bigger than them. And they don't like it. They don't like that someone's in rivaling them. And rather than seeing him as an asset and a brother, they're wanting to kill him off. Because they don't want something to take away their authority. And so Jesus is declaring, my authority is the same authority that God has. I have a divine authority. And so he says, I am, because there's this passage in Exodus. This is when Moses is at the burning bush. And it says, then Moses asked God, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me, and they ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me. This is my name forever. This is how I am to be remembered in every generation. And so when Jesus declares, I am, he is declaring himself in that moment to be God. And one thing that we see about these I am statements is Jesus is going to say something that steps on people's toes. He looked these Pharisees in the eye knowing he was going to frustrate them. He knew that this was going to be a line that they were going to try to kill him over. And so a lot of times what Jesus has to do in our lives is he has to disrupt us. We're going to see that time and time again that the message of Jesus Christ disrupts us. And I'll tell you, if you're trying to grow a church and you're trying to get everybody in here on a soft message and fill the church and everybody's happy and leaves, you leave that part out, right? That part of being a Christian is my life gets disrupted. Okay, like it really gets put on hold. And if I believe I am who I'm sent to be, who I'm sent from Jesus, and he's going to make me what I'm meant to be, then I no longer matter a whole lot. The purposes of God matter a lot. I had this happen over the last 3 weeks. When we went to play in that playoff game, I had one of the coaches look me in the face and said, you have all these 8th graders who eat it out of the palm of your hand. They love you. You have 6 heavyweights on your wrestling squad. Why don't you have a Bible study? And I'm like, man, I just want to have a little fun, not freeze to death out here. And you're asking really good questions. But see, the truth is, the more things you start and the more things of God you do, the more your life gets disrupted. That Bible study disrupts my Friday schedule, because when it's Friday and school gets let out, what is it? It's the weekend, right? I just want to wait till my wife gets home from professional development, and I just want to veg out, get ready for Sunday, and move on. But then you do what God calls you to do, and you start a Bible study and 13 kids show up to it right away. Like 13 kids show up after school on a Friday when they're thinking about the weekend, but they also want to spend a little more time with Coach Cross. and we can talk about Jesus, which we can't do on the wrestling bus. And so we understand God disrupts us, but he also uses it for his glory. Like, that's not my glory. Like, God has put me in positions to be able to do that. But I also will tell you, that's not my ministry. That's God's ministry, because I can tell you the way I built relationships with all these kids. I was told no, 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 no. And then finally God looked upon me and said, all right, now you can go teach that class and build relationships with all these kids and have what you have now. So there's tons of disruption along the way, and I know that that's God's ministry because he's laid the foundation all along the way. And so we get back to Jesus saying, I am, referencing God telling him, say the I am sent me, disrupting these Pharisees. So my hope is, as we go into Christmas, a time when everybody's just looking for presents and everyone's just looking for gifts, I hope we can realize that the real gift Jesus gives us is that he loves us enough to disrupt us, and that these I am statements, being the bread of life, being the light of the world, being the gate, being the good shepherd, being the way, the truth, the life, being the resurrection, the life, being the true vine, that all of those things are what we need in our life to endure what God has for us, to walk in the blessing he has for us. Because I just figured out this week, you can go from being in Wisconsin one week to something completely wrong with your vehicle that was 100% trustworthy a week ago. If you're not careful. My wife and I wanted to come up here. This is totally selfish marketing. I'm going to tell you from the start. My motives were not 100% pure. I wanted to come up on, it would have been Tuesday night, and take pictures of the Northern Lights with the church in the background and give us a sweet cover picture, because it would have been great advertisement on our Facebook page. All right? Not because they were beautiful, not to worship God, but because that would have made our Facebook profile really pop. Unfortunately, I tell the truth too often, and so I don't want you guys to praise me. I had motives that weren't pure. I wanted to sell the church. And Scarlett, who never falls asleep on her own, just crashes out. And I'm like, well, God, there we go. So I'm like, we're going up the next night. So we go to come up here Wednesday. We back our van out of the garage, and there's a huge pile of oil underneath it. It is clearly not in working condition to drive up to the church. So I do what every reasonable man does. I NASCAR pit change those car seats out of one van into the other, because I am going to get these pictures. All right? We are going to sell this church, especially knowing that there's big stuff right around the corner. I feel like major affirmation from God's coming, and we're ready to be home. So we drive all the way up here, and guess what? There was too much cloud covered by the church to get to see the Northern Lights while we were up here. And I was like, all right, God, like, I guess I wasn't supposed to take that picture right now. But I say all of that because God in his perfect timing slowed me down. If that van would have broke down way up north, I probably would have had to call my friends who were up there visiting too, and then see about either disrupting them, or we would take a tow ride home, which is always fun with little ones. But God in his perfect timing has slowed Kelsey and I down. He also did some work that I'm not going to continue to linger on through here. But over the last 3 or 4 days, he has put us on a collision course of disruption. I mean, he has let things be waved in our face that we didn't even know we could have. And then he's asked us if we really need those things right now. He's always disrupting. And these I am statements will disrupt us. I have this other point here that really set with me when I was reading through these two passages, that each of these 7 I am statements points to a divine characteristic that we can celebrate this Christmas season. I think there's no doubt we're going to eat food. If you guys aren't going to eat food, I'll eat your portion. Trust me. I went back and looked at the first sermon that I preached here that was recorded, and I looked at the last one, and I was like, man, God must have been really good to you, because that shirt definitely doesn't fit the same way it does now. And so God's definitely blessed you. You have not missed a meal while pastoring in this church. That is 100% for sure. But each of these things are something that we can celebrate. They are a gift to us that we no longer have to worry about earthly possession. We no longer have to worry about, is God taking care of it? Is God going to be good? Because he tells us what he is going to be. So as I wrap all this up, and the good news is we're gonna beat the kids done by like 10 minutes. So if you want to, feel free to go down and get your kid from Children's Church rather than waiting on him today. You can. I want you to know that these I am statements are meant to disrupt us. Because I kind of want a Christmas disruption. I kind of want God to get me out of my own way. The last illustration that I'll share is I just heard Tim Tebow, who I never really cared for as a football player. I will be honest with you. I think his testimony now points to the fact that I really think he was full of himself as a football player, and I think he's starting to realize it now. I think some of the Christian stuff, I think he realizes he was kind of lukewarm on the faith aspect, but it was also a good story to try to have, and now he's really just becoming almost Pastor Tim, and it's a crazy thing that he's going through. But I was never a Tim Tebow fan. It could have just been that he played for the Florida Gators, and I'm like, I don't know. I digress. That was one of those rabbits that I didn't have to chase, and it just came out of my mouth randomly. But he was talking. He said, man, I played this game my whole life. And I played it through blood, sweat, and tears. There was nothing I wouldn't give for that game. I wouldn't miss the weight room. I wouldn't miss film. There was nothing I wouldn't miss in order to play that game and play it at a high level. But he said, what if I had that same intensity with my faith? What if I ran that hard for Jesus Christ? What if my goal was to get to heaven and be absolutely exhausted? And I was like, man, God, like, you have people telling me I need to start this Bible study, and then kids show up. And then you have Tim Tebow telling me, man, you spend all your time in sports for the wrong reason, chasing trophies and stuff that fade away. Because the truth is, next week, 6 teams will be crowned state champions in football. And guess what? Come Monday morning, guess what they got to do? They got to get in the weight room and start preparing to try to win a state championship next year. Because the trophy only lasts 1 year. And it doesn't last 1 year, it lasts 3 days. And 3 days later, if you're not preparing for next year, you're falling behind everybody else who's hungry. And yet there's an eternal blessing that if we just ran after as hard as we possibly could and we said, you know what, life's going to wear me out. And nobody's going to make it out alive. I'm going to be wore out for Jesus. I'm going to let everything else fall where it falls. But I'm going to be really, really tired for the work I do for Jesus. And as soon as I heard that, I started praying, okay, God, how could I take what I'm doing with these middle school kids and how could I grow that outreach? God put 3 or 4 different ministries that we can do in this community, that we can continue to do in Mount Pleasant, that if Washington's ahead of the game because they already have FCA established, they already have Jesus in the school, and they have good student leadership. But oh my God, there's ways. And I felt like as I was getting ready for church today, I just felt God put on my heart that the most important thing I will ever do in athletics will come from the Bible studies that I lead. That I will probably never be remembered for any of the work that I do. I will probably never be remembered for standing in this pulpit. All right? I will probably never be remembered. I will probably be dead, put in the ground, and nobody will ever be like, hey, do you remember that Roger guy? I will probably pass away with this earth. But each seed that I plant in you or somebody else, or you plant in somebody else, that's the legacy that we leave behind. So I want to know who I can point people to. And that's why I want to do these I am statements for Christmas. Because it's cute. Everybody loves babies. I mean, I can tell you I have baby fever in the sense of if somebody wants to invite a pregnant couple to church so that I can hold their baby and do a baby dedication, that's awesome. And then when it's ready to cry, need fed or napped or one of those really black poops that they have right at first, I can give it back and say, here you go. Like that's the baby fever I have now. I have hurry out of toddler stage syndrome right now. But I want to know who Jesus is so we can point people to the I am. And say, I'm not pointing people to here. I don't want you to come to our church so you can think that I'm awesome, because I'm really not, trust me. I want to know how awesome our God is and who He is. And that's what I'm going to close this with prayer is, let's be exhausted for Jesus, running after the I am, and celebrate this Christmas season knowing who He grew up to be. Knowing that, yeah, He was a real baby, but He also became this as a man. That way, when people say, why do you trust Him? He feeds me. It's different. Let me close this.